Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all at our webinar. We will begin shortly. I request all the attendees to be patient, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you and welcome to all the worthy panelists who are over here. It is an honor and pleasure to host you today at a webinar commemorating Martyr's Day and advocating Kashmir issue at the national and international level. I, Amna Malik, the President of Center of Pakistan and International Relations, welcome all of you and express my sincere gratitude for joining us in this international conference. I commend your affection and devotion to the Kashmir cause. Today's webinar is a part of a cause. It is a twig of Kashmir freedom struggle which begins 90 years ago, the very same day. We hail the 21st century as the Asian century, but there is a precondition that without any diplomatic solution of the Kashmir issue, the chances of regional stability are bleak. 5th August move of Indian violation, multiple UN Security Council resolution and Pakistan and international community believe that this Indian violation is totally unacceptable. India's unilateral decision to revoke article of its constitution is a grave violation of the UN Security Council resolution on Kashmir and bilateral India-Pakistan Shimla Agreement of 1972 and the Lahore Declaration. Pakistan government concern is the increased repression and human rights violation by Indian forces in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir breed violence, fuel indigenous uprising, and further generate tension between the two countries. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres showed his concern over restrictions in Indian-occupied Kashmir, which could exacerbate the human rights situation in the region. Our Prime Minister Imran Khan emphasized at UN and other international forums that Kashmir is a core issue and needs to be resolved through the dialogue. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, he is also very active while talking to the International News Agency mentioned Pakistan and India are two nuclear states and war is not a solution. Pakistan government and Foreign Office are going to articulate diplomatically and consider the legal option for Kashmir issue resolved. China government also asked India to show restraint to show stability in the region. Kashmir, humans without human rights. This is the theme of our today program. Today we are initiating a global movement to highlight Kashmir is an internationally recognized dispute issue which needs to settle with the consent of Kashmiris. The world cannot ignore human rights violation in Kashmir. Kashmir requires peaceful resolution through dialogue. Finally, today we will see the current scenario, our right of the Kashmiri right of self-determination, which is denied. Special status of Kashmir needs to be changed and India immediately remove its forces from Kashmir. UN advocated solutions were denied and it needs to be implemented over there. And year-long lockdown in Kashmir and suffrage of Kashmiri's people in pandemic need to be thought about. Our entire presentation is about this. And we would like to inaugurate our webinar with our worthy speaker, Ms. Kate, who is the UK Member of Parliament. She raised her voice. We are thankful, madam, for you that you always talk about Kashmiris and about Kashmir cause. So, and we came to know that at different forums you spoke about them. We are thankful you are here and we would like you to discuss. So, madam, Kate Hollern, Member of Parliament, UK. Thank you very much, madam. Please.
Well, thank you very much, Amna. I've been concerned about the situation in Kashmir for many years now, long before I was an MP. When I saw clips of children being abused, and of course I've kept up that challenge, and I think certainly since beginning of this year the situation has got so much worse. So much so that I wrote to Dominic Raab only 2 weeks ago. And, you know, I was very clear, the Geneva Convention's broken here, and the UK must take some responsibility, because at the end of the day, the UK created this situation 70 odd years ago. I think it's important that we keep dialogue open. War never solves issues. It just creates further divisions. It may calm things for a very short period, but it always come back, because unless you address injustices and violations of human rights, these situations will carry on. And I think as members of parliament, we have a duty to hold the government to account and keep pressing, and not just accept the bland responses we always get that it's up to India and Pakistan. We have a moral duty to make sure that the UK's voice is heard. It should have a very powerful voice, and encourage dialogue and find a peaceful solution to this situation. I also firmly believe at the end of the day, it's up to people in Kashmir to decide their fate and not anyone else. They have the right for self-determination, and I think governments right across the world need to be putting pressure on the Indian government, not only on stopping the violations that's happening, but also to encourage that dialogue and that sit round the table and let's find something peaceful solution that the people of Kashmir can live with. And it's their right to have the basic human rights that everyone else has. Now, I'm probably getting a bit more worried about it than normal, because, of course, with the coronavirus, the information that we normally rely on to keep pressure up is few and far between. It's very difficult to get that out, and I'm concerned that the reason for the virus is actually escalating some of the problems, because people have such a very difficult situation. The media is not getting the media coverage it deserves, and I think we need to encourage worldwide people to say that this has got to stop. It's got to stop now. That things went wrong many years ago, but we cannot allow it to continue. I'm happy to play any part that this panel feels I can contribute to, and I know my colleague Kahlid is also very passionate about the situation, and we need more voices. We need to embarrass and expose the Indian government for these draconian rules that they're imposing and putting so many people's lives at risk. Total disregard. But once again, I will say it can only be resolved by a peaceful solution, and we all have a duty to put as much force as possible to encourage the dialogue to find that peaceful solution. So thank you very much for inviting me. Unfortunately, I have another meeting at 3:30, but obviously I'd like to keep updated on the situation, and any information I can use to force Dominic Raab to take some action, please send me. Also, if and when I get a response from a latest letter to Dominic Raab, I'd like to share it with people on this panel, because we really need to work together, and it cannot be a situation where every few months we sit down and we have a meeting. We need to start chatting, and we need to be demanding answers why these things are not being addressed and allowed to continue. So once again, Amna, thank you very much for inviting me. As I say, please keep me informed, and anything at all you think I can do to help, just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We just take 1 or 2 minutes of your more.
Can you just ask? Can I please just ask to let Imran Hussain in? He's trying to get in, but he can't get in. Could somebody check?
Where can
Imran Hussain MP.
Get in? Yes, sir. Kahlid Mahmood, sir, we will do that.
Yes, ma'am.
I request Ambassador Kahlid Mahmood. He has a question for Miss Kate Hollern. Ambassador Kahlid Mahmood is a former ambassador, and he's having a lot of experience. He's our advisor on these global issues. So I request Ambassador Kahlid Mahmood. Wes, can you unmute his mic, please? Ambassador Kahlid Mahmood, please. Do you have a question for Miss Kate?
First of all, I must express my pleasure at meeting you, Ms. Kate. You have very rightly pointed out the possible way out of the crisis which the people of Kashmir are facing. And you recommended that there should be dialogue. Of course, no one can deny this, that dialogue is one of the ways to solve any problem. But this is not the only way, because the UN Charter lists the methods of peaceful settlement. Those are negotiations, conciliation, arbitration, judicial settlement. All these are various methods, you know. So Pakistan has tried this option of bilateral negotiation, and I think more than 40 summit level meetings have taken place on this issue, but they have not borne any fruit. So don't you think that there is, the time has come that one should try some other options, peaceful, for the other options of pacific settlement, and not leaving everything to bilateral negotiations?
No, sorry. It's my coffee went down the wrong way. I mean, you're absolutely right, but we need more voices to be saying. I mean, clearly the actions of the Indian government, apart from the unacceptable treatment of people in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, it will also create an obstacle to any constructive discussions, either through political leaders within the region or with the government of Pakistan. And I listened to Imran Khan, and I've got to say, I was impressed at that open-handed method of, let's talk and let's get things moving. My difficulty is the offer's been made and nothing appears to be coming back. But governments right across the world cannot stand by and watch a breach in the Geneva Conventions. So we need to be saying it loud, and we need to be saying it often, because it's unacceptable that I'll get a letter back from Dominic Raab, as I have from many ministers in the past, saying it's down to India and Pakistan, but that's not working. It's not working because it's a one-sided attempt. So we need other ministers. We've got a foreign secretary who has a moral duty to put plans out to India and possibly apply sanctions. Because, you cannot stand, this is human beings, this is life, in particular, this is very young people's lives who's already lost a big chunk of their education, of their health issues, of just pure cruelty. Now, we really need to step up and go further and further. And we need to be asking the government, we need to be forcing the government to issue a letter saying there will be sanctions if this does not happen. But we need to constantly be asking the questions. We need to be writing to other countries as well and saying, is the world going to stand by and watch this happen? Because when human beings stand by and allow these atrocities to happen, it can encourage other people to attract the same. They can just bully and get away with it. And if people just saw clips of what was happening and it doesn't touch someone's heart, then to me they don't have a heart. And we have a responsibility, not as parliamentarians, but as human beings, to make sure we do everything possible to end this misery. It cannot go on. It's been going on too long. And the government, the UK government in particular, must stand up and must be a voice for basic human rights. So it's keeping up the ante, it's keeping up the pressure.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, ma'am. Thank you very much for your support. It's a big, support. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much for joining. Now we welcome. Now we would like to welcome a member of the parliament from UK, Mr. Kahlid Mahmood, to speak a little bit his idea that how we should resolve this issue and what should the international community should do. You being a politician, how you foresee this?
I'm very sorry, I can't do that at the moment because Lord Ahmed is here. And since Lord Ahmed is all of our senior colleague, in deference to him, it will be rude for me to say any words. So If you please call Lord Ahmed first, and then I'll be happy to speak after that.
Welcome, Lord Nazir Ahmed Saab.
I am much obliged, but he's the Kahlid Mahmood is the most senior MP from the Muslim community from Pakistani origin in the House of Commons, and I would have preferred him to have spoken. But thank you. Kahlid Mahmood Saab, I would like you to please speak as you've been asked to do so, and I will listen to you. I took the turn last time, and I think it's your turn now to speak, and I will listen, and then I will speak after you.
Well, thank you, Lord Ahmed. I preferred you to speak because obviously the great work you've done before all of us were in Parliament, and I think continuously somebody who has done this without any worry about his own career or his own personal issues that people will raise against him. And I think that's sort of the brevity that he has demonstrated being in the British as a British parliamentarian in the House of Lords. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and we all look up to that. I think also important here is, for me, as far as I'm concerned, and that's the comradeship, I think, within the Kashmiri origin parliamentarians that we need to show, and we have shown by and large. My younger brother, both in age and in parliamentary experience, Imran Hussain, is there as well, who's great, doing absolutely great, passionate work on this. Kate has already spoken. I said hi to Kate earlier on. Again, his great colleague who really understands the issue and does her very best to push forward. Many other colleagues are bound on this. I think the real problem we have on this issue is purely that the Indians aren't listening and are not going to listen unless there is direct action by the United Nations. And we know that the United Nations are not going to insist on India doing anything. We can't get anything out of our current government, Conservative government, even to reprimand the Indians on what they're doing. A huge abuse of human rights and civil liberties of the Kashmiri people, almost a year now to date. Forget the 72 years that they've suffered for continuously, but talking about just the recent event of almost a year of abuse, intimidation, and breaking the Fourth Geneva Convention by the Indian Armed Forces goes completely unchecked, absolutely unchecked. And I will raise some of these issues later on when colleagues get up and have a go at Saudi Arabia and other Muslim countries in relation to what's going on in Yemen. I condemn all sorts of abuses that go on, whichever country it is, and I'll make that clear. But I think we've also got to put into proportion where there's a country that you want to do trade with, or you think they're going to be on your side, and you then carry on not condemning them for the abuses that they take place. You know, we're fine to prosecute Milosevic and all the sorts of other people in Srebrenica, which is quite right, and took a long time to do that. But when it comes to people, the broken sort of people of the Eastern European countries, we can do that. But when it comes to a real challenge, when it comes to deal with something like India, we all sort of turn our face and say, oh, you know, we'll see. You know, the abuses that are going on with the Kashmiri people, but also the abuses of the Muslims and Christians and Sikhs and lower caste Hindus that is going on in India all across the piece is absolutely abysmal. And for our people here to stand there and say, well, we can't say anything, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I think it's absolutely shameful that people do that. As I say, United Nations is not going to do anything. It's never fit for purpose because it's a talking shop. It's a talking shop for those people in the Security Council who drove their little cuddly friends and, okay, we'll block this one, but we won't vote on this, we'll abstain on this. Okay, we won't do this on that. A mechanism for doing it. The whole purpose of the United Nations post the Second World War was to actually achieve fairness. That's exactly what they were there for, to implement the Geneva Convention. They haven't done any of that. They don't do it. They don't do it because the Kashmiri people are not worth anything as far as they're concerned. So they continue to browbeat. The Kashmiri people have no issues of human rights and civil liberties. We did much more against South Africa in the 70s, and quite rightly so. But we can't stand up to India. Right? And so when it comes to fairness and equality and justice for all, we talk about it. We hold ourselves as the bastions when it comes to the Gulf region, when it comes to Syria, when it comes to Iraq, and when it comes to all those countries that we can go and obliterate and then talk about their abuse of human rights, which I condemn. But what we've got to do is play it fair. Play it fair for the people like this. One of the so-called largest democracies. By the way, it's not a democracy at all. If you speak to my Sikh friends, will tell you how bad they operate in Punjab. You speak to people in eastern side of India, they'll tell you how bad it is, and some of the southern regions as well. So they'll tell you what they operate and how they operate these structures. So no way can be regarded as a democracy. I only have a request left, which I'm trying to speak to the OIC, is to get one of the countries there to be brave enough, one of the Muslim countries to be brave enough to take action in the criminal courts, the international criminal courts, to take Modi there and have him on trial, because nobody else will deal with it. So I hope, I'm talking to them, and I hope I continue to get one of them persuaded to do something about it, because if not, our Kashmiri people will suffer day in, day out, as they are at the moment. Lives are just lost. You know, dignity of our daughters, our mothers, our wives, our sisters is not intact. The safety of men, whether they're fathers, grandfathers, brothers, husbands, they are not kept intact. They go out. Indian NGOs have exposed a huge amount of mass graves. We talk about Rwanda. They'll tell you how tired of India. Will this happen? But Kashmir doesn't matter. And I think that is the unfairness that is there. All my parliamentary colleagues here are doing exactly the same thing, but we've got to get more action, putting pressure on the British government. And I think we've got to talk to more MPs outside of the people like Kate who support us, but other people outside of that, and actually put real campaign pressure onto the government to do that. And we'll be doing that. Certainly my colleagues, Lord Ahmed, friends, and Imran, we work very well together. Kate works together with us, all of us to work together. We need to get more people joining in so we can put pressure on the British government. There are one or two Tories that support us, but we need more Conservative members of Parliament as well to do that. So hopefully we can move forward with that. So thank you very much. I think I've taken too much time as it is.
Thank you very much, Kahlid Mahmood Saab. Very encouraging speech. And now I would like to request our very popular Lord Nazir Ahmed Saab. You always win the heart of Muslim community by raising your voice for the Kashmir issue and many other Muslim issues. You remain the member of House of Lords of the United Kingdom. You did a lot of work on Kashmir issue. How do you think the world needs to act upon in the current crisis, especially in this pandemic? We really feel bad for the sufferings, and I'm being a female, I'm a women advocate. I feel very bad for those unarmed civilians, especially our females, how much they must be suffering, and what kind of emotional tensions they are facing every day, and what kind of threat. This is an example which nobody see in any part of the world. So why the world is not raising their voice? So I just request you to highlight on these points.
Amna, first of all, thank you very much. And I want to pay tribute to my colleague and my brother, Kahlid Mahmood, for excellent contribution and his speech. And I want to pick up on some of the points that he's made. And I'm looking forward to listening to Imran Khan, Member of Parliament, Imran Hussain, rather, Member of Parliament from Bradford, my nephew and also my colleague. And they make a huge contribution in the House of Commons, and particularly on the issue of Kashmir. Let me first of all, because it is the Kashmir Martyrs Day, we are remembering those 22 Kashmiris who laid down their lives just doing their azan outside the Srinagar prison. As you remember, that in 1931, when the Dogra forces started shooting the Muazzin, and then the second one stood up and continued, and the third one, and then so that killing continues. This morning, 5 young Kashmiris in the coordinate search in Baramulla and also Srinagar area were killed. Yesterday, there was coordinated search operation in Baramulla area, where a young man was killed, and on daily basis 345 young men have been killed this year, and civilians, and you've seen children who have been killed, but there are literally hundreds of our sisters, young sisters, who have been taken away from their homes for bad purposes, which the Indian Army, since last year, when the lockdown started 5th of August. And we've seen, actually, this is, you mentioned COVID-19 and what the world is doing. Kashmir is going through 2 lockdowns. One is after the terrible events of 5th of August, and then the COVID-19. And the Indian administration, the occupied forces, the fascist forces, actually used COVID-19 by imposing further curfews on the Kashmiris and their leadership, by imposing curfew over there. I want to pay tribute, not only pay tribute, but also pray for the over 100,000 Kashmiris who have been killed, martyred by the Indian security forces in the last 2 decades. In the 90s, 100,000 almost. I know it's easy to say. If you remember 9/11 and how people read out their individual names, and those individual lives matter, but we, even by mentioning just bold figure, we don't, sometimes we probably don't remember the individuals, whether it is Burhan Wani or Bhatt Saab, or those who have led this fight, peaceful fight for the right of self-determination for the Kashmiri people. How the international community could help, Kahlid Mahmood has very, very kindly mentioned that any government, any OIC government or any other country could take this matter up at the International Criminal Court. Look, we saw the Rohingya community doesn't have a country of its own. So none of the big OIC countries actually took their case up at the ICC, at the International Criminal Court, but Gambia did. One small African country, and the court summoned Aung San Suu Kyi to come and answer those allegations of murder, rape, and how 750,000 Rohingyan Muslims have been thrown out of Burma. Similarly, in Indian occupied Kashmir, we know the fascist regime, the RSS and BJP have been involved with not only killing of minorities that have been mentioned already by Kahlid Mahmood and Kate, but also everyone knows, it's all documented, what happened in Delhi, what happens in other parts of India, the lynching that is going on, the killing of, on daily basis. Some minority gets persecuted, some minority gets caught up either under this fake kind of claim that they were transporting cows or beef or some meat, which then they blame them for slaughtering cows. So, and they've used it also in terms of demolishing mosques and burning down mosques and other places of worship. Christians have not been spared. Minorities have been abused. I honestly think that the international community really hasn't done anything. Very few countries have criticized India, very few, not even Muslim countries. And I'm saddened, and I said this again and again, I'm saddened that the OIC just issues a statement, wishy-washy statement, but more importantly, when the Kashmiris were being killed, our women were being raped, our young men, 14,000 were taken away before 5th of August last year to Indian prisons. We still don't know where they are. They've still not been returned. And the whole of the Kashmir Valley remains without internet. 2G is not good enough when people have been doing business, and the rest of the world is on 4G and probably working on 5G. So this kind of abuse must stop. But I think the pressure has to be on OIC and Muslim countries, because when the killing of the Kashmiris was going on, the Arab countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, even Iran and Bahrain were actually awarding Mr. Modi with plaques and awards. That's got to stop. And if we're really going to behave like OIC bloc, then they need to support the Kashmir cause. And I'm glad that my colleagues are here who've been putting pressure on the Foreign Secretary, and I'm glad that they've spoken in the House of Commons in the debates. Imran Hussain has spoken passionately, and Kahlid Mahmood, Kate, and others as well. And so I want to thank you for organizing this conference. You can count on us on the continuous support in the House of Commons, in the House of Lords. I'm sure my colleague Lord Qurban Hussain and others will tell you the amount of work that's been done. But we will continue doing this until Kashmir is freed and the right of self-determination is given in accordance with UN resolutions. Free, fair, and impartial plebiscite. Thank you, Amna.
Thank you very much, Lord Nazir Saab. We are working on a comprehensive report on Kashmir issue and how Kashmir humans are without human rights. And we also will be needing your support and guidelines that what should be the suggestive solution. And we also ask our worthy parliamentarians, Kahlid Mahmood Saab and Imran Saab, to further give us guidelines so that at the end, we should work on certain recommendations on which we raise our voice at the international level, because I believe the civil society and parliamentarians want to talk about it. This is something very important. I request Kahlid Mahmood Saab to comment on it, and then I request Lord Nazir Saab to comment on it. Thank you. Kahlid Mahmood Saab.
Sorry, I missed that. Gigi, sorry.
Okay. My question is that we are working on a comprehensive report of this webinar, and we request you to give us certain recommendations that, how we raise our voice at the international level, what role the civil society and parliamentarians can play, and few suggestions. And then we also request Lord Nazir Saab to also guide us.
Well, we're happy. Look, as I said before, we work very closely together, and we can combine this together, all of us, to be able to do that. So I'm very happy to do that. We'll speak to Lord Nazir, we'll speak to Imran, certainly, and we can sort of put something together. So we will work together collectively. There's no need for any one of us to do that. We're happy to work together collectively and do that.
Thank you. And Lord Saab, how you guide us?
Well, it's not a guidance, it's only a request. I'm sure we can do it, but it's better coming from parliamentarians in Azad Kashmir and also in Pakistan, because we are like a third party. Britain is no longer the colonial imperial power. And just like, look, if there was some kind of mass movement in Azad Kashmir and Pakistan, just like the annexation of West Bank, the Palestinians have been able to raise it with European parliamentarians, and we had 1,080 MPs across Europe signing a letter, a statement. I was one of those, and my colleagues were also on that letter. So what I think that instead of individual little campaigns, we need to have a massive campaign where everybody comes together. You need to do some things, we need to do some things. Just like Kahlid Mahmood Sahab has said, we are happy and we would be happy and delighted to work together. But you need to get the all-party Hurriyat conference to unite together on a particular course of action. You need to get the Azad Kashmir government and also the parliamentarians. But you know, there hasn't really been. Shah Mahmood Qureshi Sahab has issued statements, but we need to have some more representation from Pakistan government in major capitals. Yes, COVID-19 hasn't helped. Yes, because of the airline traffic, which was stationary for about 3 months. But now everything is coming to normal. Then we need people in Washington, D.C., in Brussels, in Washington, New York. We need them in, Geneva, and also in major capitals to raise awareness on how this fake encounters and search and coordinate search has been used to kill people. And also, just like in West Bank, the way people have been driven out of their homes and using 35A and 370 to give citizenship to ex-soldiers to come into Kashmir and also change the demographics of Kashmir. This has all got to stop, but we need to have these campaigns. How we stop it, and then I think you will have out of this the recommendations. We need campaigns, in particular awareness of people. This is what India is trying to do, is demographic changes. These also by bringing in, grabbing land and property of the Kashmiris and bringing in people who don't have right to come and settle, and this needs to stop.
Thank you very much. We request you to continue with us, and I request Imran Hussain, another worthy member of Parliament from UK, please express your opinion about our dialogue and discussion and everything. Mr. Imran Hussain, sir, welcome.
Thank you very much. Can I firstly say it's very difficult to follow some of my senior colleagues that have spoken before me. I think they've very articulately set out the issues that we discussed today at this timely conference. I mean, firstly, can I echo the words of Lord Ahmed that we come together today for Kashmir Martyrs Day, and I think he's very eloquently put that position. And we firstly remember all those that have tragically lost their lives in this struggle over the decades, certainly longer than my lifetime and many others on this call. Also, Kahlid Mahmood, my colleague, I think again spoke with his usual passion and set out the issues as he sees it. And they're both comprehensively, along with Kate Hollern, covered the issues. There's very little for me to say. I mean, I want to echo everything both, but certainly Kahlid and Lord Ahmed have said. But if I could perhaps just concentrate, if you like, on three key areas as I see the situation at present. Firstly, and again, this has been covered, I think Lord Ahmed alluded to the current situation, I'm sorry, Kahlid as well, to the current situation in India. And let's be really clear, we have a government in India at the moment that has complete disregard for all minorities. The persecution and oppression that we see within mainland India at the moment, there are stories almost on a weekly basis. I mean, I was speaking with a number of people in London late last week around British Muslims who had gone there in a very peaceful manner and happened to be stuck there during this COVID pandemic. And they are now in jails in India with nobody representing them. You know, such is the state of play in India at the moment, and the other issues, as quite rightly highlighted by my colleagues. So this is a government that clearly has, you know, a very ideological view of the world that tragically isn't one that any of us here would share. And I think, again, whilst the conference is not on that, I think the ideology is well rooted. And if we all, you know, for those who care to learn, can see that over the course of history. And this is that same ideology following on. So let's not underestimate where we are in the Kashmir struggle at the moment. This here now is a real focal flashpoint in the Kashmiri struggle, because for the first time, what we are seeing is a government that is unilaterally acting without any regard for international law, without any regard for any convention, and they are single-handedly aiming to destroy the Kashmir cause. Let's just be absolutely clear. This is, whether that's the revocation of Article 370, 35A, or the recent domicile laws, this is a clear attempt, in contrary to international law, to change the demographics of Kashmir and to effectively end the Kashmiri struggle. Now, that's why this is a very important time, because, like colleagues have said, tragically, what we can't see, what we cannot see, what we do not see at this time is the international condemnation that should deserve, because you have such blatant actions at the moment, where previously you had actions where there were disputed actions that were contested on all sides, and the international community almost had some wiggle room. Now we are seeing blatant acts in violation of international law, where there is no room to for anybody to move away, yet we are seeing deafening silence effectively. And again, you know, I think Kahlid made the point, and he's right. You know, one has to start asking the question around the effectiveness of the United Nations. The second issue is the ongoing blockade, the issue around the human rights violations and how that's been impacted. I mean, we know the persecution, oppression, and injustice for decades now. However, since last August, we have seen that really escalated again as part of a well thought out plan by the government of India and Modi's administration. We've effectively seen a blockade that has continued for over nearly a year now. Whilst we've seen some ease in the communications, various things, but it's clearly not effective, to the effect where we now have a situation with the COVID-19 pandemic where effectively people in the occupied territory cannot even learn of the various health bulletins and benefits you know, that are communicated through social media and other such means. So the situation is dire again. And I've always seen this as in two parts, and colleagues that have heard me speak before on this will know that, and I think it's a really important really important to differentiate between those two. One is the human rights aspect, and the other is the long-standing self-determination issue. So the human rights aspect is now at an absolute critical emergency point, I would say, again. But even on that front, over the decade, we know what's happened, and that the international community remains deafeningly silent again. And we've seen, you know, that there have been numerous reports on all these areas. However, again, those reports are gathering dust in bookshelves. You know, where has been the action from those reports? And it brings back to the point made by colleagues earlier around the role of the United Nations. Now, in the third and final point, and again, I've probably gone on longer than I should, is the solution. Look, I've always said this, as long as one voice keeps speaking, one voice should keep speaking, because the Kashmiris will never be silenced, regardless of the attempts that are being made to silence the sons and daughters of Kashmir. We must keep, through every format, through every means, we must keep moving. And the suggestion, both Lord Ahmed and Kahlid Mahmood made, I think, again, and I don't want to repeat the points they made, but they made reference to the ICC. Again, we saw the bold move that was taken with regards to the ethnic cleansing and persecution that was happening against the Rohingya, again, actually for the world to see, but the conclusive action was not taken against the Burmese military, which were acting very much similar in these circumstances where, just over 1 million Rohingya were affected. But again, it took a third country, a relatively small country, to refer that matter to the ICC. So I support that call. Of course, we should be looking at that. Do I think that, that will happen over the next week or 2 weeks, or in a very short period? Tragically not, because again, we've not seen anybody move towards that. We've not seen any noises coming from anywhere. Again, that is tragically something that hasn't or materialized as it should have done. But that should not be the call. The call should be for the United Nations to move forward swiftly on this matter. Again, one of the tragedies that we are facing today is internationally, countries are putting trade before human rights. I made points in a recent trade debate we had around this very same issue. Again, in India, when people talk about India, they are talking about trade, not the human rights abuses, not the persecution, not the oppression, be that in mainland India or in the occupied territories. And we must continue. The only solution, again, is a peaceful solution, but that peaceful solution has to be with all the parties concerned sitting around a table. And it's not good enough. Tragically, the UK, we have a historic and a moral duty, but it's not good enough, the UK and parties of all stripes simply reverting back to the position that, this is a bilateral issue. Well, it's not. It's an international issue. And equally, we need, it's not good enough, because where Pakistan may say we're ready for table talk, I see prominent Kashmiri leaders such as Barrister Sultan Mahmood on this call, who was a long-standing champion of this issue whilst he was in the Premiership and both in opposition. And I'm sure he will agree with me, as well as with other Kashmiri leaders. Kashmiri leaders have been ready for table talk for decades. This is nothing new. But when India refuses to even meet, or for example, even in the UK, when we as an all-party parliamentary group meet together, and that's a group of all parliamentarians from all different stripes, a group that's presided by Lord Ahmed, and both Kahlid and I serve on that group along with other colleagues. But when we write out to the Indian High Commissioner in the UK and we are not even dignified with a response to me, then I think to talk about table talk on an international level where countries will sit down is something that perhaps is fanciful and is not going to work unless the international pressure mounts. So we need to continue to keep that pressure on. Again, I'm sorry, Amna, I've probably gone on longer than I should have done. Today is a very important day for the Kashmiri struggle, and there are a number of conferences like this, so I will probably shortly have to leave to go on another one. But in the presence of senior colleagues like Kahlid, Lord Ahmed, and now Barrister Sultan Mahmood Sahib, you are in more than capable hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Imran Hussain. I just have one question. Do you think that economic interests are, more important in the foreign policy of different countries, and that is also one of the issue we are facing? Like, can you explain a little bit about it, and why the UAE government and other governments supporting Modi and its stance? So, do you think economic interests also play some role in the lobbyist?
Well, look, this is very topical in the UK at the moment with, the United Kingdom leaving the EU, and now we are looking at trade deals across the world. So it is a very topical area. Like I said before, this was raised by me in a recent trade debate. But tragically, the answer to your question is, that trade is always, looked at favorably, and sometimes countries do treat human rights as a secondary poor cousin. That's just the reality of where we are, which is absolutely wrong. Trade can never ever take precedent over injustices, persecution, and human rights, and we must continue to make sure that is always exposed wherever we can. I know we do that very effectively in both houses of parliament, and colleagues here push that agenda along with me, and will continue to do that. But if I was to answer your question with a yes or no, I think tragically trade does play a role and sometimes does take precedent.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate your effort. We welcome our champion on Kashmir, Barrister Sultan Mahmood Saab. In 3 to 4 minutes, Governor Punjab, Chaudhry Sarwar Saab, is also joining us. There is another question from Ambassador Kahlid Mahmood and Zafar Jaspal Saab, so please ask question, Ambassador Saab.
No, I didn't ask for the floor. I think Jaspal, perhaps. Maybe Jaspal might have a question.
We can't hear you, Jaspal. Yes, now can you speak?
Yeah. Okay. My question is to the parliamentarians that what is the mood within the House of Commons as well as House of Lords, especially on the issue of violations of the human rights within India, and second, how the people are looking. Not I'm talking about keeping aside the official policies because they want an engagement with India, but generally, what is the people's conceptualization on this issue? That India is in the grip of extremists. And when the country drifted in the grip of extremists, naturally, it has its own, you can say, repercussions. How within the UK society and as well as in the parliament, they are looking at it. And I think Lord Nazir has been following these things. I would be very grateful if he appraised on it.
I think in terms of the fascist government and RSS and those Hindutva actions against minorities is well documented. The Guardian and the independent newspapers, as well as other media outlets, have been reporting on the rise of extremism. And I'm glad that the Freedom of Religion Committee in the United States and also the European Parliament has issued a statement as well in relation to concerns. Can you hear me? Am I still muted? Or,
no,
yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, basically, because everybody is aware of the extremism and the Hindutva movement that has been attacking minorities, in particular the Muslims, Dalits, Christians, and Sikhs, and others as well. And everyone knows. I mean, look, we've spoken about this before. There is a concern, and everybody knows when the Indian governments and various Indian political parties used to talk about the largest democracy, secular largest democracy. They know it's neither secular anymore or the kind of democracy that we believe democracy should be. There hasn't been a democracy in Kashmir, for instance. There are other states where they've imposed a leadership from Delhi. So there are concerns, and there have been debates. But sadly, because in the last 3 months, because of COVID-19, there haven't been real live debates. There have been questions, there have been concerns, but we've not seen the same type of debates and the fringe meetings that normally take place in Houses of Parliament. But everything is recorded and everyone knows what's going on. But I think our expectations shouldn't be too much from this conservative government because of Britain leaving European Union. We need business, we need to reach out to other countries. And like Kahlid Mahmood and Imran Hussain have both said in relation to trade and business, then there's a mute in terms of human rights. And but I think there is another angle now, that because the RSS BJP government has taken on China in the north, and Nepal, the Nepalese government or parliament has unanimously passed resolution to approve their map, and also condemned Indian involvement or trying to overthrow the Prime Minister's legitimate government there. And Bangladesh is not happy because of CAA and other neighbors. So, I mean, everybody knows that this fascist government is a problem for the region, and that could also be a problem for the entire world too.
Lord Nazir Ahmed Saab, my question is how the international media is reacting to this. Like, what is their response?
I think the international media, if you've been following Twitter, then you will see international media in the recent past, whether it is New York Times, Washington Post, The Guardian, as I said, Al Jazeera has been very good, TRT, and also even the Russian newspapers have all reported in terms of the current situation with neighboring countries, the tension that this Hindutva government has created between neighbors. Of course, with Pakistan, they've got this paranoia about even pigeons being spies, and these toys that they keep pretending that they are, and they turn out to be made in India, by the way, that they are spy drones somehow. So everybody knows, and sometimes I think people do have a laugh about it, but it's a serious matter. These people have got control over nuclear weapons, they've got control over long-range missiles, they've got lots of money to spend on weapons, and they keep doing that, whether in terms of the Russian missiles, or whether it is the fighter jets from France or the US. They do that to gain their political support. So, as I said in the past, I think Pakistan needs to come out of Islamabad and really go and lobby in international capitals, as well as a campaign by the Kashmiris. That's why you have this base camp that should have been campaigning for the right of self-determination for the Kashmiris, which in my view really hasn't done that. And you really need to train those people and send them out.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I request Mr. Sultan Mahmood, the former Prime Minister of AJK and current President of PTI, Azad Jammu and Kashmir, you are the main motivation behind this movement of Center of Pakistan and International Relations. And due to your guidelines, we are working on a complete comprehensive research paper and engaging national and international stakeholders to discuss and find out the solution on this Kashmir issue and highlight the human rights violation. So over to Barrister Sultan Mahmood Saab.
Thank you very much, Amna, for giving me a chance to speak at this conference, and I am very grateful to the Center of Pakistan and International Relations to organizing this video conference at the right time. And moreover, it's the right time because it's 13th of July, which is a Martyr Day, and we reaffirm our commitment on the Martyr Day that struggle for the liberation of Kashmir will be continued until and unless the people of Kashmir get the right of self-determination, which they have been promised by the different United Nations resolutions. And at the moment, India, since last 5th of August, although the struggle is going as long as we mentioned about the 13th of July, 90 years ago, even much before than that, especially after 5th of August, there is a total lockdown, there is a big state terrorism going on in occupied Kashmir, and the people, the valiant people of occupied Kashmir are struggling against the 900,000 Indian troops, and moreover, still the Indians are violating the line of control as well. So any small incident or accident could trigger a war. So we ask the international community to play their role in it. And moreover, India is trying to change the demography of occupied Kashmir. They are giving the domiciles to the Indians so that they could settle in occupied Kashmir, and that whenever there is a time for plebiscite, they could have some more votes. But I think people of occupied Kashmir will not allow them to settle with them. And I think that this is a very high time when India has been exposed internationally because of suppression of the minorities in India, and also they have some extensionist views against China, against Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, every other neighbor Bangladesh. So I think that international media is also giving a lot of coverage, at least what they are doing inside India with the fascist regime of Modi, RSS. So I think that this is a time that we should work hard to bring it on international forum. But as my friend Lord Nazir was mentioning, that because of the COVID-19, so it's not much the diaspora in they can do for protests and things like those. And with this summer, I think the parliaments will not be open and relevant institutions. But still, I think within given limitations, still we should continue. And the diaspora, especially in United Kingdom, Europe, Canada, United States, is already working very hard. And I think that this is a time when the next 5th of August is coming, 1 year conclusion of Indians' subjugation and oppression in occupied Kashmir. And we salute to the people of occupied Kashmir who are struggling against Indians' totalitarian government in occupied Kashmir. So I think that, as I said, in given circumstances, like we have moved a petition in in UK, so that the British Parliament should debate on Kashmir issue and the human rights violations in occupied Kashmir, so that the Parliament can discuss it. So, and similarly, United Nations Commission of Human Rights has already given not only once but many times reports on the violations of human rights in occupied Kashmir, and that is one of evidence and the document after UN resolutions we have to take and go to the different institutions and parliaments to work there. So I think that we Kashmiris and of course the Pakistanis should work together to raise the issue on international issue when India has already been exposed internationally. So I think our work will help the people of occupied Kashmir, and they are struggling and giving the sacrifices for a very, very long time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just say I have to leave because I have another meeting to go to. Barrister Saab, Assalamu alaikum.
We welcome the Governor Punjab.
I'm sorry you have to leave. You just come on. I've got another Zoom conference to go to. Inshallah, we'll speak soon.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming here in the conference.
Thank you, Khalid.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Khalid. Thank you, Khalid.
We welcome Chaudhry Muhammad Sarwar Saab, the Governor Punjab, our chief guest. Barrister Saab, you would like to continue or?
Just I think we will give to Chaudhry Sarwar Saab.
Chaudhry Sarwar Saab headed many important positions in UK and Pakistan. His effort for Kashmir is highly appreciable. He spoke at various forums and we would request him to give us an overview of the government stance on Kashmir and how the international community should act upon, and what are your suggestions and recommendations. Over to Governor Saab.
Amna Malik, first of all, I want to thank you and appreciate for organizing this webinar and inviting all of our friends who have worked very hard during last 30-40 years. I have seen Barrister Sultan Mahmood, taking the flag of Kashmir all over the world. And Barrister Saab, it was a privilege. I remember those days when we were touring European Union and we were touring United Kingdom, raising the issue of Kashmir throughout the world. So I appreciate this is a very good effort, and I think this is the right time now to expose the brutality and atrocities and gross violation of human rights by Indian occupied forces in Jammu and Kashmir, and of course in India. Let me begin by the Kashmiri movement that started in July 13, 1931, Yom Shuhada. The Shuhada of 13 July 1931 were the forefathers of today's Kashmiri resistance, when 89 years ago, 22 Kashmiris were killed for daring to defy the Dogra Raj in the valley. Today, their descendants have laid down their lives for freedom and continue to valiantly fight and defy the Hindutva supremacist regime bent on demographic engineering to wipe out the Kashmiri people and their identity. Kashmiris have renewed pledge to accomplish the mission of martyrs till achievements of the goal of liberation from Indian aggression. Pakistan has always stood steadfast for the Kashmiri right to self-determination and will continue to support this just struggle. We fear that the massacre in Kashmir, similar to 1995 genocide, you have all witnessed in Srebrenica, I remember when I was a member of parliament in United Kingdom, we launched the campaign, Save the Bosnia campaign in United Kingdom, and raised the issue and the brutality which was unfortunately taking place against the Muslims in there. I think this is very important for people to understand, and it is our job to make it known to the people what is this Article 370 and 35A. So I will briefly let you know what I understand from this. Indian government that changes Kashmir special status as a disputed territory, including demographic changes, which is the beginning of the genocide. Corona curfew since last 1 year, no internet or limited internet link to the outside world, 340 plus days military siege. With Indian administered Kashmir's special status repealed, people from the rest of India would have the right to acquire property in Jammu and Kashmir and settle there permanently. Article 370, the article which came into effect in 1949, exempts Jammu and Kashmir state from the Indian constitution. It allows the Indian administered region jurisdiction to make its own law in all matters except finance, defense, foreign affairs, and communication. Article 35A was introduced through a presidential order in 1954 to continue the old provision of the territory regulation under Article 370 of the Indian Constitution. The article permits the local legislature in Indian administered Kashmir to define permanent residents of the region. It forbids outsiders from permanently settling, buying land, holding local government job, or winning education scholarships in the region. So on 5th of August, unfortunately, they have abrogated this 370 and 35A, and after that we know that what kind of brutalities and violation of human rights are taking place. So the Indian government didn't stop there. They went further when they introduced Citizens Amendment Act in India, which exclude Muslims from having access and same provisions as other religion groups under CAA. India is prosecuting national and religious minorities and silencing opposition, human rights groups, and journalists critical of government. So one thing I want to compare, and I think this is what is very important that we tell the world, that what is happening in Pakistan and what is happening with the minorities and with the Muslims in India. You all know that Kartarpur corridor that was a big initiative from Prime Minister Imran Khan, and we opened this Kartarpur corridor in a record time of less than 1 year, because we care about the minority communities in Pakistan. We are spending a lot of money, the government money, to repair and renovate mandir, Sikh Gurdwara, and we are giving full freedom to all our minorities in Pakistan. And on the other hand, what kind of atrocities are taking place in Kashmir, and what is happening with the Muslims and Christians and other minorities in India. So I genuinely believe that Narendra Modi is now on this settlements and change the demographic of Kashmir, is taking lessons from Netanyahu, who I believe he is a terrorist who is killing people in Palestine. And that's what policy is being adopted by the Indian government. So we have to be very vigilant. We have to tell the world that this is what is going to happen, and we are not going to let it happen. And I think there are a lot of positive things that are happening as well in the world. I remember I had the opportunity to go to United States of America, where I met a number of senators, congressmen, governors, and Secretary of State. And one thing I was surprised that they were willing to listen what is happening in Kashmir, and what kind of violations are taking place, and they were sympathetic to our cause. Then I went to United Kingdom, and thanks to our parliamentarians in United Kingdom and all those our diaspora who is involved in politics in United Kingdom, they have always highlighted the plight and sacrifices of the Kashmiri people to the politicians, to the trade unionists, and the general public in United Kingdom. That's why we can see strong support in the House of Commons for the people of Kashmir. And then we come to Europe, and I went to European Union in last December, and I had the opportunity to meet at least 40 members of European Parliament. My mission was to visit them about GSP Plus for Pakistan, and also I raised the issue of Kashmir with all those members of European Parliament. And again, I can see that they have the feeling and they know what is happening in India, what the government of India is doing, what the army in occupied Kashmir is killing innocent men, women, and children in Kashmir. So after that, I have seen the big change in the attitude of the European members of Parliament. And 15 members of European Parliament has written a letter to the President of the Commission asking them to stop the brutality and human rights violations in Kashmir. And in fact, they went further. They have raised the concern about the Citizen Amendment Act in India as well. So I think this is now the right opportunity for the friends of Kashmir that we highlight this issue now throughout the world. And now I think the India face, which people thought about them, it's a secular state, it's a big democracy. Narendra Modi has managed to end this secularism in India, and people all over the world understand and know what's taking place. So now there are senators who are speaking out in favor of Kashmiri people. Joe Biden, who is the presidential candidate in the United States of America, he has spoken out. So I think it's a real opportunity now that we should move forward and we should raise this issue at every platform, at every level. So we have the message to the international community that there has to be some kind of sanctions against India. There has to be some trade sanctions against India, and international community cannot now turn the blind eye and deaf ear to the plight and suffering of the people of Kashmir. And I'm glad that a number of our people and number of our friends in the European Union and in United Kingdom, in America, in Europe are raising this issue. And I think it is very important now, it's a very good time that I'm going to, and I'm already speaking to our members of the National Assembly and senators in Pakistan, that they should now try, and I request the diaspora as well, that where they are living in those countries, they should contact their members of parliament in those countries and request them to establish the group, Friends of Kashmir group, in the parliaments in Europe and other countries. And I think that is going to make a difference. And one thing important, I think improvement, this is the first time that OIC has now taken the notice what is happening in India and what is happening in Kashmir. And I think we need to focus with our Islamic countries as well, that they should take up this issue with India. And I would request all our parliamentarians and other leading personalities and ask other people that they should write to the head of states and foreign ministers of Islamic world as well, telling them what is going to happen and what is happening in India. We cannot allow India that kind of brutality and atrocity which is taking place in India. And I believe this is a very good initiative. And I'm again thankful to all the participants. And I can assure you that wherever you need my presence, wherever you need our help, Pakistani government, the people of Pakistan are standing shoulder to shoulder with our Kashmiri brothers and sisters at this very difficult testing time. We wish them all the best, and we will support them all the way And now this is the time that international community recognize this brutality and gross violation of human rights and take action now. And I think this is the time now to take action, because nobody believes. To be honest, I tell you, my heart bleeds when I see that, the young children at the age of 15, 16, they are lifted from their house and then in fake encounters, they are killed. This is really very devastating. Nobody can believe that in the 21st century, this kind of brutality can take place, and international community is not speaking out the way international community should act. But this is our job. They are our brother, they are our sister. They are fighting for their freedom. They are fighting for their self-determination. They are fighting for a noble cause. They are fighting for a just cause, and we have to be fully behind them. And again, I can assure you, inshallah, I am planning, as soon as these corona issues are addressed, planning to visit European Union countries and then Britain and United States of America to highlight the plight of the Kashmiri people. Once again, thanks to all the participants. Thanks to Amna for arranging this webinar. And inshallah, I am sure now Narendra Modi, what step he has taken during the last 2-3 years, I think this is going to damage more India than the people of Kashmir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Governor Saab. You highlighted Indian hegemonic designs and Modi fascist ideology, and we should be stick together on the platform of Friends of Kashmir and other platform, and we should raise our voice again and again. And these kind of webinars and activities are a small effort to raise our voice, and I believe that we should do it on regular basis. And I always appreciate that you always stand ahead on Kashmir cause, like Barrister Sultan Mahmood and our other worthy parliamentarians and friends. Thank you very much, Governor Saab. Now we would like to discuss a very important aspect, which is about the threat of nuclearization of this region. Kashmir has its impact on regional dynamics. So I request our worthy advisor, Dr. Zafar Jaspal, who is a professor at the School of Politics and International Relations, Quaid-e-Azam University. He is also an expert on defense, strategy, and national security. So I request Dr. Zafar Jaspal to highlight the key points. Thank you very much.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Amna, for providing me this opportunity to speak on a very important topic. And I'm very much glad that the dignitaries are here, especially Barrister Sultan and Governor Saab, and earlier we had these, you can say, members of Parliament, House of Commons as well as House of Lords. Now, the most important point is, and let me take from where the Barrister Sultan Saab left. He said that because of the increasing situation or deplorable situation within the Kashmir would have a spillover impact, and that spillover impact could lead both states to a war. It's correct. If you see what is happening, and entire world has recognized in the last 1 year the governance style of the Prime Minister Modi, which is very much driven by Hindutva philosophy, and it brought India not only in an internal crisis, and earlier as it was pointed out by Governor Saab as well, which has, you can say, quashed the entire India's constitutionalism or secularism and resulted India into a unitary state which has no democratic values or governed by Hindutva or RSS forces. What are the results which we have been witnessing in the last 1 year? It's understandable India and Pakistan's, you can say, rivalry. But what is happening in the case of Nepal today? Nepal Parliament has, because of the Modi policies, has, you can say, passed a resolution on the border. If you see, since 1996, Chinese have been observing CBM arrangement with India, and they were avoiding any escalatory affair, you can say, steps at the you can say line of actual control. Even after the you can say, this revoking of the Article 370 and the changing the status of Ladakh, we have seen the Chinese response was very calculated. But because of the policies policies of Prime Minister Modi, today we have seen that what happened in the Galwan Valley. Now, this kind of the mindset is there, and Pakistani government, Prime Minister Imran Khan has raised many times that there is a probability of false flag, or there is a probability that, which I'm also convinced with this, that Prime Minister Modi, in order to protect his face, his armed forces to protect their face, they may go for some kind of a military adventurism. And this military adventurism, unfortunately, is acceptable to the majority of the Indians because of, if we recall, the 2019 general election. Now, what is the problem here is that when we look about the Pakistan and India's strategic policies, Pakistan has been determined to defend itself, and its entire capability is to deter the India. But on the other side, when we see where is the abnormality is that the Indian leadership, which has lost its conventional superiority confidence, especially on 27th February 2019. And if you see all the reviews, and those reviews have been telling that India has no conventional superiority by which it can dictate its terms to Pakistan. And we have seen in the last 1 year, Indians have started opting a policy which we use in a strategic terminology, a jargon, nuclear compliance strategy. If India go for a nuclear compliance strategy, that is a very dangerous. If you see, the entire literature is full of that a nuclear compliance strategy cannot be adopted against a nuclear capable state, whereas Pakistan is a nuclear armed state. And if the India go for any military adventurism, or if it continues with this kind of a false strategic superiority, or you can say misguided strategic policies, then not only this region will be going to suffer from a nuclear winter, but the entire world is going to suffer. So that's why when Paris Sultan or the other leading figures raise this concern, because of the Hindutva policies, we cannot rule out the probability of military adventurism in the region by the Indian, you can say, leadership or Indian armed forces. The result could be that when Pakistanis are going to defend, the escalation of the conflict into a conventional war or escalating to a nuclear exchanges cannot be ruled out. So because of this reason, we are very much concerned that the region is at the brink of nuclear, you can say, war, and we have to avoid the world and save the world from it. And my final word in this context is that when we are talking about this, of course, Pakistan has a defensive capability and we are trying to do this. But the international community has a responsibility. Responsibility because of United Nations Security Council resolutions. They have to settle the Kashmir dispute. They have to, you can say, grant or ensure the right of self-determination to the Kashmiris. Otherwise, within the Indian occupied Kashmir, the resentment will continue, intifada kind of movements will continue, and frustration of the Indian government will continue. As a result, this frustration, which will be multiplying on the Indian side, it may lead them towards what we call it military adventurism to save their face, and Pakistan is going to respond, and as a result, there will be a war which is not going to have a devastating repercussions for this region alone. It will be having a global repercussions. With this, I can back the international community that it should act not because of their political-economic interest. They should act because of human rights, because of real interest for the safety of the entire world from a disaster. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you very
Saab.
much, Dr. Iqbal. Yes, ma'am, Amna Malik.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. We have certain questions for you. So I request Uwais, who is our research associate and who is writing a comprehensive paper with the board of Center of Pakistan and International Relations on the possible solution on Kashmir issue. So he has certain questions. Uwais.
Thank you very much, Jaspal Saab, for sharing your shrewd insight on the subject. My question is that what is the impact of China-India Ladakh standoff on the Kashmir issue of Pakistan?
I think that when we look about the China-Ladakh issue, of course, at the moment it has flashed. But it flashed in the advantage of the India, because the international community's entire attention has been now focusing on China, India, and India wanted to sell this. Frankly speaking, when generally we say it was a mistake, no, it was a calculated move by the Prime Minister Modi. He was demonstrating India's China military posture, which was missing since long, and which was a requirement of Indo-US strategic partnership. This China, you can say China's military posture was a requirement to justify what the Americans were supporting them in the Indian Ocean, which India says India's ocean. Now, having said all this, but when he went there, here comes the problem that despite his best of his efforts, the conflict escalated. And that's the problem is that, and that was my also point when I was making presentation, the police don't play risky games because conflicts take their own dimension. We are on a slippery road in the Indian occupy at the LOC, which can anytime leads us to a disaster. Now where is the problem? Now coming back to your question, India got a relief from international community because international community is now focusing on China. And if you see American campaign, and the Americans have started looking or presenting China as a strategic competitor, and American-led world, this Europe, Britain, they are more concerned with that geopolitical issue. Now, in this gap, India may go for some kind of a military adventurism. Why? Because India is in a need of military adventurism today, especially Modi government is in a need. The reason is that they have been beaten at the Ladakh side, at the LSE. They have been beaten there, and now they wanted to show some kind of a resilience, and may they go for LOC side. And definitely they will be beaten here again, as what happened with them in February 2019. But this kind of and you know that Hindutva mindset is, or the nationalists or ultra-nationalists, they can take these kind of risks. And if they can take a risk, then what I was earlier raising, or the ambassadors have pointed out, we cannot rule out the possibility of a devastating war. So international community has to take into account that India's this way it has presented and try to create an attraction by demonstrating what we call it China's military posture. It's fast. The crisis is still at the LOC.
Yeah, sir, I have a follow-up question. As you have mentioned that India is portraying itself as a resilient nation, and it was confronting China to increase to project it so far, not only in the region, but at the global side. So my question is that Pakistan is a flag carrier of the Chinese developmental projects in the region, and we are having the the flagship project of the China's BRI, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And in this context, and not only at the regional level, but at the system level, where China is competing and struggling and challenging the global powers, what do you think that what will be the repercussions for Pakistan in this scenario when China, India, USA are playing their great game, and Pakistan is not, the economically solvent to fight a mega war, as you have just mentioned in your answer?
Look, you are correct that there is a great game in our neighborhood. Though we are not interested to be part of it. Pakistan is very much interested to have a peaceful resolution. That's why we are not going for an arms race with India. But at the same time, we are interested for the OBI initiative should be in the shape of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor should be in our benefit. But the reality is this, that even we have no choice. We have to prepare for ourselves. Despite this, that where the Chinese or you can say Americans have their own interest, we have our own legitimate interest. And our legitimate interest is how we can solidify our defense and and it's in our legitimate interest because we are a stakeholder of the Kashmir dispute and we have to drag the entire international community back as this webinar is meant for. That please don't think that this Kashmir movement, there is a very interesting point which we need to highlight here. If you see in the international literature, in the Pakistani literature, or in the Indian literature, the impression we gather that the freedom movement in Kashmir has been started recently, or its ingredients have been after 1948 war. But there's a need to mention the freedom movement in Kashmir, or the demand for the right of self-determination in Kashmir, even before the demand for a Pakistan. That was 1931, which was earlier mentioned by the barrister and the Lord Nazir, that they started demanding on the nationalism based on the religion for the sake of Azan, and that's the day we are celebrating today. So Pakistan became in 1947, exactly 1.5 decades before, or more than that, before Kashmiris, the right of self-determination, that we have a right to determine what is our religion, how we have to live, what is our nationalism, what is our way forward. It has started. Now, after 1947, it has been clubbed with the partition, or you can say Pakistan independence formula. So the world has to, and we have to demonstrate this, where they start looking that it's a Pakistan's problem or it's a Pakistan created problem. No, it's originated even before Pakistan. And this is the point which we have to highlight. And that my final point answer to your question is, yes, CPAC is a flagship project. It's a need of China, it's a need of Pakistan. We should not compromise on it. But at the same time, we have to live in this world, and it's a real world. And this entire world has been now, once again, it's no more 1990s or first decade of the 21st century. It's a 2020. The drums of the Cold War are there. We are hearing the echo. You have to go for a strategic partnership, and we have to chalk out our policy, keeping in mind military chessboards, and we have to now come out of these kind of the notions, demilitarization, United South Asia, or this. We have to be very careful and sensitive what is happening in our neighborhood, and especially in the Kashmir.
Thank you very much, sir. Point well taken.
Thank you, Dr. Zafar Jaspal Saab. Now I would like to request Ambassador Kahlid Mahmood. He is the chairman of the Institute of Strategic Studies in Islamabad. He is the former ambassador to Iran, China, Saudi Arabia, and Mongolia. He considered an expert in Pakistan foreign policy and is going to highlight the various aspects of the Kashmir issue. Thank you, Kahlid Saab. You are also the advisor of Center of Pakistan in International Relations, and your advice is always having a value. So, Ambassador Kahlid Saab.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Honorable guest of honor, Chaudhry Muhammad Sarwar, Governor of Punjab. I really feel greatly honored in the presence of such distinguished people like Barrister Sultan Mahmood and honorable members of Parliament from the United Kingdom, and my dear friend Dr. Jaspal. Today's occasion, as was rightly pointed out, is the commemoration of the 1931 uprising of Kashmiris against the Dogra rule, when 22 helpless, innocent Kashmiris were martyred. Now this struggle, one can recall, has been going on even before that. See, one is reminded of the long travail of the people of Kashmir under Mughal, Afghan, Sikh, British, Dogra, and now the Indian rule. Their struggle has waxed and waned, but never vanished. It has kept rekindling time and again, but so has persisted unabated oppression by the occupying power, India. Now, this is an informed audience. They are well conversant with the genesis of the Kashmir dispute. But I would recall 3 milestones. Of course, there are 28 about Security Council resolutions on Kashmir dispute. But as I said, there are 3 milestones. One is, of course, the passage of the United Nations Security Council of 21st April 1948, 31st August 1948, and 5 January 1949. What did they say? They prescribed that the future of Kashmir will be determined in accordance with the wishes of the people of Kashmir, to be ascertained through an impartial plebiscite conducted under the aegis of the United Nations. The second milestone was in 1951, when India organized these sham elections there and portrayed that as if the people of Kashmir have decided to be part of India. But these Security Council acted and said that these elections or any other political chicanery cannot be a substitute for plebiscite and will not constitute a valid disposition of the territory. And the third milestone is 1998, when following the nuclear testing by India, followed by Pakistan, Security Council, while adopting a resolution relating to these tests, affirmed the need for settlement of Kashmir dispute in the interest of peace and security. So in other words, the nuclear dimensions of this dispute, if this remains unresolved, that was highlighted. But the crisis has entered a new, more ominous stage following these unilateral illegal measures adopted by the Indian government on 5th August and 31st October last year and 2nd April this year successively. These measures have sought to abolish Kashmir's special status and autonomy and change the demographic character of the territory, which is in complete violation of international law. I am referring to the 4th Geneva Convention. It's contrary to relevant UN resolutions. It is contrary to the Indian Constitution. It also violates the Simla Agreement and the Lahore Declaration. Now, the Kashmir dispute has three aspects: political, legal, and human rights damage. The political aspect is grounded in the faithful implementation of the Security Council resolutions, which I just referred to. But legally, the law of prescription is not applicable to Security Council resolutions. According to more than one Secretary Generals of the UN, Kofi Annan, Ban Ki-moon, and now Guterres, Antonio Guterres, they all have affirmed that Security Council resolutions do not lapse with the passage of time. They remain valid till they are implemented or rescinded by the Security Council itself, or the parties agree something among themselves on a different settlement. Further, it is stated sometime that the Simla Agreement has ousted the authority of the UN, and only now avenue available to settle this problem is through bilateral negotiations. As I said earlier, that Pakistan is not against negotiations to settle the dispute through bilateral negotiations. But what has been the experience? More than 45 summit-level conferences have been held on Kashmir, but they did not bear any fruit. So it means that peaceful negotiation, yes, but there are other means available also. Inquiry, conciliation, arbitration, judicial settlement. I think these are all Pacific settlement dispute mechanisms. So if one mechanism is not working, I think one has to consider opting some other Pacific settlement mechanism. Now that this, and also the Charter of the United Nations says that if there is any contradiction between the obligations under a bilateral agreement and under the UN Charter, the obligations under the UN Charter will prevail. Now, these political and legal aspects are very important, but they're not of instant nature. The thing which is staring us in our eyes is the abysmal human rights situation in the occupied Kashmir. That is very pressing, calling for urgent attention of the international community. But India's response to the Kashmiri's people to struggle to exercise their right of self-determination has been brutal and barbaric, resulting in deaths of some 1 million innocent people, maiming of thousands of others, all-round material destruction. It has been an horrendous tale of repression marked by torture, arson, rape, extrajudicial killing, wailing widows, children, and the aged, the missing persons, the unmarked mass graves dotting the Kashmir Valley. They speak of the massive human rights violations being carried out by the Indian military and paramilitary forces deployed in the Indian occupied Kashmir. And the obnoxious use of civilians as human shield and subjecting them to pellet guns is quite common. One British newspaper has said, it looks as if pandemic of blind eyes have spread in the valley now. So many people have been affected by this indiscriminate use of pellet guns. So the people of occupied Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, they are suffering the largest lockdown, rather longest lockdown, rather now double lockdown. And this communication blackout, and also every kind of restriction is imposed on them. The Genocide Alert, an organization, has already warned of the danger of impending genocide of the people of occupied Kashmir. So of course there has been no reaction. There is a now awakening in the international community. Now more and more media, the Congress people, parliamentarians, be they in Britain, in the United States, in the European Union, all are now expressing their concern on what's happening. Of course, that is not enough, but I think things have started moving, and meanwhile, India's true face has been exposed. It's fighting war on 3 fronts now: internal, against Muslims and other minorities in occupied Kashmir, and also against its neighbors, principally Pakistan, and now China as well. I want to, explain some concepts, or some issues which are raised in this connection. It is said that it is a territorial dispute between India and Pakistan. No, it is not a territorial dispute. It is a dispute about the right of self-determination, a right which has been now become, as they say, jus cogens, that is peremptory law, that there cannot be any exceptions. Then it is said, as India alleges, that it is trans-border terrorism. No, it is not. But if it is India's position or allegation is right, why it doesn't allow UNMOGIP United Nations Military Observer Group in India and Pakistan to examine, to investigate. They are not, or they don't allow even other organizations or people to visit the territory, occupied territory, to verify facts. I think it is an indigenous struggle of the people of Kashmir, and their durability and sustainability is loud and clear. So I think I come to the last part, which is important one, and that is the recommendations. I think we have to now build a pressure on India, if necessary by imposing sanctions bilaterally or through the United Nations. This fact has been emphasized by some other speakers also in this webinar. I know it is difficult, but that has to be the target. And for that, we have to mobilize the international community, including the liberal elements in India. Secondly, we have to build on the momentum generated by 2 successive reports by United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. His 3rd report is awaited. Particularly his recommendation for the establishment of a commission of inquiry and to ensure respect for the right to self-determination of the people of Kashmir. This is the first time that the UN body has clearly, apart from the Security Council resolution, that after a long time, a UN body, and that too which is dealing with the human rights, has come out with these 2 recommendations. And as has already been stated, we have to examine the option of taking India to the International Criminal Court for its crime against humanity, war crimes, and genocide in Indian occupied Kashmir. If this Burmese leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, if she can be called to ICC, if the Yugoslav leaders who committed atrocities, they can be hauled up before the ICC. I think the Indian leaders who are presiding over this reign of terror in Kashmir, I think they become also a fit culprits to be brought before the International Criminal Court. And another recommendation would be that the growing interest of the international media and human rights NGOs in the matter has to be sustained. Now about the OIC, of course, it has lent full support to the Kashmir cause in all aspects. But I think member states may be now urged to walk the talk. They do adopt very, strong resolutions, but they don't follow it up by actions. Their relations with India are not disturbed at all. Rather, sometimes their actions encourage India to persist in its present policy. My another recommendation would be that the UN Secretary General's role, which is envisaged in Article 98 of the Charter, has to be activated. He has of late shown sensitivity to the dangerous situation evolving in the region over Kashmir, but he may be urged to adopt a more forthright stand and, like OIC, appoint a special representative to follow the Kashmir situation. And Pakistan should keep working to garner support of the major powers, particularly the permanent members of the Security Council. They should be persuaded to eschew their narrow economic and commercial interests. Now, while trying to prevent Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir descending into a genocide situation and providing relief and succor to the brutalized people there, we should not for a moment allow ourselves to be deflected from the fundamental issue of allowing the people of Kashmir to exercise their right to self-determination, pledged to them by UN, India, Pakistan, and the rest of the international community. Pakistan should keep its policy of extending full moral, political, and diplomatic support to the Kashmir cause. There should be no dilution in it. Another thing comes to my mind is India's aspiration to become a permanent member of the Security Council. Now, how can India have the temerity to aspire for such position of a body of whose resolution it openly trashes? India does not give any respect to the resolutions of the Security Council and wants to become a permanent member of the same body. Have you ever heard of a member being allowed to, a person being allowed to become a member of a club whose rules, regulation that person doesn't respect? So I think there is no basis. No, India doesn't have any credentials to be a permanent member of the Security Council, given the policies it is pursuing inside India vis-a-vis the Pakistani Muslims and the other minorities, as well as in the occupied Kashmir. I think it is incumbent upon the international community to mobilize pressure on India of all kind, because otherwise, what Dr. Martin Luther King said, he said, the ultimate tragedy is not the repression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by good people. So I think the international community can no longer remain silent in the face of the horrendous policies, actions of occupying power India in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Saab. Very well informative discussion. We missed one of the speaker, Ms. Clark, US Congresswoman. Due to the official commitment, she's unable to join us today because she was available after 2 hours. So maybe we'll plan another session with Ms. Clark. And because she always raised voice for the Kashmiri people and highlighted and demand Modi government to bring an end to this communication blockout and curfew in Indian occupied valley. Her concern on human rights violation is highly appreciable, and thank you for her message. And looking forward to have another session with her and Barrister Saab and all the eminent participants. Basically, the aim of this conference was to call the attention of the global community towards the illegality of Indian military presence in Indian occupied Kashmir, and to stimulate the UN advocated solutions in Jammu and Kashmir. The conference addressed the dire need to identify collective effort by all international actors to highlight the human rights violation. Now I request that we have an interactive session under the presence and leadership of Barrister Sultan Mahmood, that what should be the recommendations, what should be the possible solution of this Kashmir issue, how it should be resolved, as we are having Dr. Ghaffar Jaspal and other friends. So first, I request Barrister Sultan Mahmood to give his opinion.
Thank you very much, Amna. It was a very good discussion in this conference, and we had people like Dr. Jaspal and Dr. Ambassador Kahlid Mahmood, who are the authorities on Kashmir issue, and so many relevant and interlinked issues. And we had also had eminent people like Werner Server and the members of Parliament and members of House of Lords. So it was very important on 13th of August. So I think that it was a day, a Martyr's Day, and I think we should continue our struggle till victory. And I think that although India on 5th of August last year just abrogated Article 370 and 35A, and people of Kashmir were suffering for hundreds and hundreds of years, and especially since 1947, had suffered more after 5th of August 2019. But I think that has highlighted Kashmir issue more than ever before. So I think we should continue to take this issue on international fora. And India, who was saying they are the largest democracy in the world, they are the secular sport, they are the secular state. Now, internationally, the Kashmir is a scar on the India's face. And now, as I've said earlier on, that they want to change the demography. So I think that Pakistan need to go to United Nations, because they can't just give domiciles to Indians to settle in occupied Kashmir to change the demography and the Hindu population more there. So I think it's a violation of UN resolution, and I should say that, and we will ask the Pakistan government that they should go to the United Nations. I know they have already been there, and just a few days ago, they went on the human rights organization within the United Nations. So similarly, the other steps which we can take is like after 3 weeks, 5th of August is coming, and 1 year will be completed when the Indian fascist regime abrogated Article 370. So I think we need to highlight that on next 5th of August, although we will not be able to, because of COVID-19, to have big demonstrations everywhere, but still symbolic demonstrations and symbolic protest must take place. And I will ask the diaspora to make this point. Thus, 1 year will be passed. So I think that furthermore, we will ask to all the parliaments, institutions, and also we have United States presidential election this year, end of November, in November. So I think that Pakistan lobby should work there as well, because the United States is a player whether we like it or not. And also Joe Biden has mentioned about Kashmir, and I think we should support people like those. And I think that will be very useful. And similarly, we should also get in touch with the parliaments. One problem we are having with the European Parliament is that we had a very strong lobby in the European Parliament, because we had members from United Kingdom, the European Parliament, and they are more involved in Kashmir issue because of their constituents, because of their lobby, and because of their commitment. So I think that we should further try in the European countries now that their members of European Parliament should equally raise voice as the British European members of Parliament used to take. So I think we need to take all these steps to raise Kashmir issue.
Thank you very much. Now I request Dr. Zafar Jaspal to have his opinion. What should be the recommendation for this issue?
Thank you very much. My final word on it is that let me concur what the Ambassador Saab has pointed out. They were very solid recommendation, and including what later on the subsequently Barrister Sultan Saab pointed out. So all those recommendations must be, you can say, spelled out in a specified manner, and then we prioritize our action. My final recommendation could be that this issue it needs a multidimensional support from the society of Pakistan, print media, electronic media, academia, politicians, government, all need to work. So we need to strengthen the civil society voice as well as the You can say government voice is already there on the Kashmir issue. And then, as it was pointed out earlier, that this new normal has now giving away. Once again, we are restarting the engagements. So Pakistan should prepare, the government of Pakistan as well as the other groups should be prepared that they can rush to the Europe or the rest of the world. And then, as it was Ambassador about pointing out, November is their presidential election day, a month. But electioning process has started there. So there's need that Pakistani diaspora should be mobilized in the United States so that they can raise these concerns. And at the same time, Pakistani government has to maintain this, that if the Modi will go for any false flag and military adventurism, we are going to react. So that there should be no space for them to play dirty games. And finally, 1 year of lockdown of Kashmir is about to complete. So we start preparing now, highlighting what happened in the Kashmir, Indian occupied Kashmir, I mean, in the last 1 year. What are the outcomes? How much we have been successful in sensitizing the international community? What we have faced the challenges. On the basis of that, we do a review and we start our policy with a revamping of our existing policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now I request a final word from Ambassador Kahlid Mahmood. Ambassador Kahlid, sir.
In my statement, I already listed about very concrete 8 recommendations. To those recommendations can be added the other recommendations which have been made by other distinguished participants of this webinar. From that, one can see that one needs a multidimensional approach. Every segment of society has to be energized, and of course, many occasions provide this opportunity, and the next opportunity is this 5th of August when these 1 year will be completed of the Indian action of 5th August 2019. I must commend you really for having organized this seminar. I know how difficult it is to collect people from across different continents, and this shows your commitment and to the Kashmir cause. And I'm sure that you will be able to produce a good report from gleaning the views of the participants today. I think they all deserve attention by the decision makers and the civil society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Inshallah, on 5th of August, we are publishing our report. And we are thankful to many of all the speakers and panelists who speak very well. Now I would like to thank all of you, and we miss those who are unable to join. I'm also thankful to all the participants who attended this conference. We will inshallah keep on raising our voice because it's a global movement, and we would like to engage the global stakeholders and the friends of Kashmir. Inshallah, Allah हमारा रास्ता आसान करे. आप सबका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. पाकिस्तान पाइंदाबाद. Thank you.